Hey investors, Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're listening to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Now, as an investor and a broker myself, I want to know what's going on in our market. We like to study it and keep you guys up to date with what's going on local, Toronto, GTA. Well, what's the point unless we're talking to investors? Now, I know it's been a while since we've had a guest on our show. In fact, it's been a couple weeks, but today we have Jared Henderson, who's our first guest. He actually lives in Montreal, but invests in the GTA, specifically in Peterborough. Now, it's been a while since we've had a guest on our show, mainly because I've been looking to find an assistant to help with the bookings. Well, we are up and running once again. In fact, the week that I'm recording this podcast, we've got 5 being filmed. So very excited to get back on the train and interviewing and speaking with people from various sectors of the real estate community, including investors. So if you want to learn about how to invest remotely, or if you've ever kind of considered scaling your portfolio, whether that's local or further out, and building systems in order to do that, that is a conversation that Jared and I had today. I learned a bunch of stuff. We had a very good chat, give you some tips and tricks if you're looking to build that portfolio. I hope you enjoy. If you do, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and if you want to leave a comment for myself or Jared, you can do that down below. Enjoy the show. Jared, thanks for joining us on the show. How you doing?
Great, Bradley. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show. I've seen you on other podcasts as well, and I know you have so much value to bring our audience. Maybe you can bring everybody up to speed. Let us know a little bit about you and kind of your journey, how you got into the real estate game.
Yeah, sure. Just to give a quick summary, started investing almost a decade ago in Niagara Falls. I'm from Montreal, so sort of the theme throughout my investment journey is doing things a little bit differently. So I've never really invested in Montreal. It's always been in Southern Ontario, only because I lived in Ottawa and a friend of a friend started investing in condos, and I thought that would be a good way to start out. So I started out in Niagara Falls in 2012 and really sort of expanded my portfolio through refinancing and taking on new challenges in different markets. And long story short, I've wound up in Peterborough and Hamilton, but mainly Peterborough. That's the area where I focus. Up to 12 properties there, both personally owned as well as joint ventures. And my strategy is simple, simply buying raised bungalows and converting the basement to a second suite. I've got a good process going. I know my numbers. I know my targets. I know the good areas, the not so good areas, and doing the best to get my partners all their money back out through the full BRRRR process. And honestly, having a really good time. The market's been crazy, as everyone knows, the last year, and so you could have bought anything and done quite well, but when you're buying strategically, the returns are that much more amplified, and looking to keeping it going, and like I said, having a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to get to kind of pick at some of those things, right? The way you are able to manage joint venture partners, you're working remotely. I know you've got some very unique systems. Now, obviously, you've got a process in place. Is this kind of been from day one, or how did that kind of evolve along your real estate journey? What kind of got you into wanting to do this, and how have you been able to fine tune it?
Yeah, it definitely didn't start day one, and I had zero processes day one. My organizational skills are much far ahead than what they were 2 or 3 years ago, especially in the last year, because as you accumulate and you start building, the paperwork stacks up. And my strategy 4 years ago in Peterborough was simply student rentals. So with $100,000, you could buy a raised bungalow and put in, 10 or 20 grand to put in another washroom in the basement and some drywall to add a few bedrooms. So you'd get a 6-bedroom collecting $3,000 per month at $500 a door, right? And that gets us our 1% rule, right? So buying the bungalow for then was a little over $300,000 and collecting $3,000 a month. Easy peasy, collect a few, good strong cash flow, and that was basically it. But a couple of years ago, I started exploring buying privately, through yellow letter campaigns, as well as dealing with multiple agents in order to find the deal. I'm obsessed about finding the next deal in my market, and I find that those who don't or complain that there's no deals around and everything's overpriced, they're just not looking as hard as guys like myself and others who make deals happen. But just to come back to the BRRRR strategy, Peterborough allows the bylaw permits us to create a second suite in these houses, right? So they can be R1 zoned. There's no rezoning. It's simply just an accessory suite that, provided you have enough ceiling height, egress windows, 5/8 resilient channel, you can legalize these, and rents are high. So I really started exploring the velocity of money once you can do one of these every 4 to 6 months and refinance your money and invest it into the next project. And that's what's keeping me really busy, and my contractors and my investors.
Wow. It's so interesting because, again, I think there's a little bit of people forgetting this is all happening remotely, right? Like when you're talking about going out, finding deals, I'm curious, the first, maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I'm curious, how do you do that if you live in a completely different part of Canada? I'm curious, what is that? How have you set that up?
You have the internet too, right? You've got the internet.
Through the internet. So you're doing those all. So are you finding yourself? Do you have someone helping you locate deals as well?
I cast many nets out into the ocean. So I'm not only checking out MLS, I call multiple agents. I send yellow letters to solicit privately, and everyone knows that I'm a serious buyer. So I want to be the one that someone thinks about when they have a deal and they want a no hassle buyer, and say, look, Jared's going to buy it because he's got 12 places already, and they demonstrate some sort of credibility, right? So at the beginning, I was just working with one agent, and I would recommend to your listeners, for those starting out, who are looking to invest in a remote market, to work with an agent that, number one, owns income property, and number two, he or she will be the strong referral for the property management and contractor contacts that you'll need to begin your business. That's the way to start. Yeah.
Good advice. Very good advice. So let's backtrack a little bit. So Peterborough is kind of where you've planted your flag, and obviously you're extremely familiar now because you've done, and it sounds like you plan on continuing to do these conversions. So why Peterborough? Like what went into that thought process? You did obviously a lot of work up front, and you are standing strong with that decision. I'm curious, what was it about the city that drew you in, and maybe people can take that advice for as they're looking around as well.
Yeah, so I went on a property tour with an agent who was showing properties around Oshawa. This is in 2017, so it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it just goes by fast, right? And we were going around, and there was just no cash flow to be had. And the reason why is prices were, let's say, asking $399, holding back, and probably getting $475. Then you'd probably need another 75 or 100 grand to put in the basement. And I was running the numbers, and I'm like, it doesn't work with current market rents. Now, go back 4 years and imagine the rent in 2017. They are not the same rents as we get today. So at that point, I think you might get like 1,400 upstairs and then like 11 or 1,200 downstairs. So simply there was no cash flow to be had. And, with my luck, I was figuring, look, and his name is Rob Brake, a great guy. He's now in Costa Rica. He is my agent in Peterborough. I said, look, with my luck, Oshawa was going to stop appreciating because it had 5 years of 20% year over year appreciation, and I can't bank on that. And if it's not going to cash flow, then it doesn't sit well with me. He gives me a call 2 months later, and he says, I think I got something, Peterborough. I'm like, okay, what about Peterborough? So anyway, I started out on the tour with him, and it's a personal tour. We were just going around checking out houses, beautiful bungalows, nice neighborhoods for 300 grand. And I was sold immediately. There was, you have two major education institutions there. You got, Trent University and Fleming College. Each have 7,000 to 8,000 students in enrollment. He connected me with an investor that, put up one Kijiji ad for a student for a room and got like 100 replies. Like, okay, so the demand is there. And I just copied and pasted what he did. So, buy the raised bungalow, create a couple of extra bedrooms in the basement. So turning a 3-bedroom into a 6-bedroom. There's always one next to the kitchen. So 4 up, 2 down, or 3 and 3, however it configures. And that's how I started in Peterborough. That's how I started in Peterborough. It was basically cash flow because I could get strong rents at a low purchase price because at the time, Peterborough's, let's say, $150,000 less per home than Oshawa, but similar rents, right?
Right.
And that equates to higher cash flow, and that's what I was interested in.
I mean, if you look back the last 4 years, it was definitely the right call. I think what's interesting about your story is you're not getting too far into the details of numbers. It sounds like you saw an opportunity and it worked and you just pulled the trigger, which is fascinating. Maybe it's I'm guilty of analysis, a little bit too much analysis paralysis. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that. If there's a lesson to be learned here, looking back, Peterborough is fantastic. There was many fantastic cities in the GTA, but you saw this and you said, why stop? If it's not broken, don't fix it. And I love that. I love that. Now, do you focus on students for each of your homes, or just the demand for students helped encourage you to get into doing a couple families in these homes?
Not anymore. I'll take on students if, let's say, I've got a couple students that want to sign a year-long lease and things are slow. Let's say it's, I don't know, October, November, and we need to fill it up. But as a matter of fact, I'm moving away from students just because one thing that a lot of investors don't realize is the amount of turnover and maintenance they cause. So as a investor from afar, I'm paying for those lease ups, which are, for your audience, renewals on leases, right? So when the lease is up, great, the tenant's out, and then I've got to pay typically one full month's rent to my property manager to fill that room up again. You'll have students stay there for 8 months, 12 months, usually less than 2 years. So those numbers add up, they affect cash flow. And, not to dive too deeply into it, but with COVID, I don't want students because I don't know when classes are on, when they're off. If there's another wave and everyone wants to go back home, they're going to break their leases. I'm looking for young families and professionals who are interested in renting for 2 to 3 years plus. They're going to provide some stable income, right? Because rents are so high. Why do I need students? Yeah, I can simply rent it out to, like I said, professionals or young couple or combination of the two if the place is big enough. And even single family can make sense if you're buying at the right price.
Yeah, and knowing there's universities in the location still benefits you whether you're doing students or not, because there's still a demand, a pressure on the rents for that area. So absolutely, even if you transition, clearly it doesn't change your love for that city.
Yeah, and I'll never say no students. It's all a function of what the market conditions are like at that specific moment, at that period in time. So it's never the same, right? But I think it's good for investors to start out with student rentals, get their feet wet with that type of experience, just to generate some cash flow and learn what it's like to either be a property manager or work with one that's trying their best to make it work, and then transition to call it higher tenant profile, lower turnover tenants, where you've got some stability and you don't need to get there's talk of people in London and Windsor doing like 8-10 bedroom student rentals, and I get it, and it's great, but bank's not going to want to touch that to refinance it, and be just no matter what, if there's no locks, if there's no nothing, they know what it is. That's a great asset to just sort of keep as a cash flow beast, right? Just bring in the money, but don't expect to refinance it anytime soon. And if you can't repurpose it, then that's fine as is. But there's such an opportunity right now with raised bungalows and converting them that that's where my focus has been.
It's such a good point. I never really thought of that from the student's perspective, from the student landlord perspective. Is when you change these regulations, it forces your hand a little bit for people who would otherwise provide housing for students. I mean, put aside the replacing the tenants, maybe you're local, you're doing yourself. Even still, the inability to refinance is pushing people out of that market, which obviously affects the housing. And as prices go up, you kind of wish you had more students in order to get that 1% rule, which is near impossible other than maybe some of these areas you mentioned. But so let's kind of take a step back right here. I'm curious. So you've got obviously a lot of experience investing remotely. So have you invested in Montreal? Have you only invested in the GTA? And what are some things you've learned? Like, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's considering doing something like that?
Yeah. Funnily enough, I have one duplex here in Montreal. It is 6 blocks away that way. Um, and I just have one because we were able to put 5% down, right? Claim it's, we're going to move into it. And basically, we're making all the money off of the low interest mortgage pay down. And it's in a good area. And it was all done. So we wanted something easy. When I say we, it's my partner and I. And it was just a great opportunity to introduce her to a little bit of my world and show her what I do in other parts of the country, like Peterborough. I'm also in Hamilton. I've got a place in Windsor and Aurelia, but like I said, I focus in Peterborough right now. And sorry, what was the second part to your question?
Yeah, I'm just curious for someone who's considering investing remotely, what would be some thoughts? Like if you were to kind of look back at what are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities? Do you think it's helpful to do that? Maybe you're in a market that's good locally. Would there be a benefit to going remote, even if you could invest in your hometown?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd recommend it because it really does broaden your horizons. Not to be cheesy, but like once you can invest in a remote market, I can pick whichever market I want, and I know where to start. I know how to build that business, and I would encourage it. But I think that the steps 1 and 2 are critical. Number one is pick a market and stick with it. There's so many good markets. I mean, yes, I want to invest in Sudbury, and yes, I want to buy 10 homes in Windsor. And hot markets will always be popping up. And I think investors who don't pull the trigger, they're always investing. They're always asking investors like me or anyone else, what do you think about this market? What do you think about that market? They're asking me now what I think about Cornwall because I'm going to go there. And I'm like, yeah, it's a great market. There's a lot of cash flow. It's halfway between Montreal and Ottawa. It's definitely only going to appreciate. Just do it. It doesn't have to be that much more complex than that. I know there's a lot to it in migration, population growth, transportation development. But at the end of the day, pick your market. And once you're there, you asked how I do it in Peterborough. Well, I jokingly said the internet, but the truth is you can connect with people on meetup groups. There's a lot of Facebook groups and on Instagram, wherever, where you can connect with experienced investors who are having success in the market that you're interested in investing in. You need to connect with those people, understand the strategy, and then dive in and contact a reputable realtor in that area that buys income properties themselves, and connect with them and get a plan going where you say, hey, I've got this much saved up. I want to buy a property in your market, but I'm going to need help with introductions for contractors if it's not turnkey, and definitely a property manager because I don't live in the town. And normally they're very helpful, right? They want to grow their business as well, and they want to help beginner investors purchase their first property, even if they're outside of town. And more and more investors are doing what I'm doing. So it's definitely nothing special, but it does take a leap of faith, and it does take some. You need to build relationships, right? You need to build that trust with your team that's going to give you quality feedback on the house you bought, on the tenants you have. Without that, it's very difficult to run a business. So, I've got many eyes and ears in Peterborough that are looking out on my behalf. And the truth is their success in their business relies on me expanding my portfolio. And that's how you have to see it. It has to be a win-win, right? It's not just I'm helping you. So, it needs to be mutually beneficial. And yeah, I could go on and on, but I think you get the idea, right?
Well, you know what? You hit on some good points there.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I agree. I agree with all of those things. And I mean, the relationships, right? Just do it. You said just do it. We should trademark that. There's so many things that you mentioned there that
you do it before you're ready, because no one's ever ready. Just do it before you're ready. I think that's a better one, where most people are just questioning themselves. How did you do this? How did you do that? Well, do some things before you're ready. You can get 75% there on the education end, and then take action, and you'll figure out the other 25.
It's funny when you think about I've thought of this before. These are some of the weird thoughts of Bradley, but all of the things in life that are the best things in life come with this kind of risk or uncertainty and not knowing the end result. I mean, if you were to look at all the things that you've done that have been most important, I know in my life, they've all come with you're taking a bit of a leap of faith. And I don't think this is any different. But that said, those who are unwilling to take that leap of faith are the ones that will get left behind. And that's the majority. So, I mean, I think that when you come in and say, just kind of jump into it, get going, I think that's the right thing. Not to say it's completely uncalculated, it's completely blindfolded, but it's absolutely needs to happen before you feel 100% ready. I totally love that. So for someone who wants to expand, grow their portfolio, what would be some things that they should be focusing on right now? Like, what are some key steps they should take in order to build that real estate portfolio? We do have I kind of set the tone. We have a lot of investors with multiple properties even that follow our podcast. Big, small, what are some things that they can be doing to grow?
Yeah, so I said it before, in terms of focusing on the market, I think I got shiny object syndrome at the beginning of investing. I bounced around to a few markets, and I don't necessarily regret it because certain things just weren't working out in certain markets and I didn't know how to respond. But I think focusing on a market, especially once you have, let's say, 3 to 5 doors in that area or under 10, is extremely helpful because it's so much easier to deal with one contractor, one property manager, and you build your business that way. Another thing, and it's obvious, is that, you know, I'm with Building Stack, we're a property software management company that helps investors large and small organize their portfolio, their documents, their rental payments, the communication when there's troubleshooting that needs to be done regarding maintenance and any tenant issues, as well as marketing, right? There's a lot of vacancies now with the transition from urban centers to more rural settings. And what we offer is basically an automated advertisement portal where we draw on all your marketing content, the pictures, the layouts, the rules and regulations of the building, and we push that out to multiple channels so that you're not stuck just doing one at a time, one for Kijiji, one for Facebook, one for Alue or rental.ca. So yeah, it's really building that system so you have an organized foundation to build from is really key. And look, I'm definitely not perfect myself. As you can tell, I'm the type of guy that just goes, and I leave a mess behind me. Now I'm cleaning up that mess, and I'm starting to get some help on that end to organize my life, and that is normal. You'll have the investors that are scaling quickly. Usually they do have some help. So I would also encourage your audience not to think that you can do it all alone. That's been a challenge for me because I think I started out this investing process thinking, well, if I buy my own homes and I've got my own cash flow and my own appreciation, then it's all mine. But the truth is that the better you are at building those relationships in your power team and in partners, like I know just the faster you can grow, and you can't do it all alone. If you think you can, talk to an A lender after 5 to 10 properties. There's obstacles along the way. So networking is so important as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you just kind of briefly mentioned Building Stack, and you've got, for anyone watching with video, they can see the logo in the corner. So it's funny because a lot of people who start investing, they build their portfolio, maybe they do joint ventures. They natural for them to move in property management or move into some kind of contracting business. Sounds like you've taken more of a tech approach. I'm curious what was involved in that decision and kind of creating that platform, and how has that really helped you or been able to come at it from a different angle?
Yeah, so there's many different aspects to real estate, like you're aware of, just keeping track of the paperwork, but as well there's marketing, communication, and you want to have a centralized hub where you can manage everything from. Doesn't mean you pick up the phone or you never send an email, but the idea is that as you go go through growth, you don't want everything to be sort of fragmented and decentralized, because it'll lead to a lot of stress. I mean, you'll be on phone calls where you'll spend, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes longer, looking for a document that you can't find. So you want everything readily available. You want to know where your vacancies are. You want to know how soon something's going to be filled. You want to be the first to respond when there's a leaky faucet or problems with the toilet or the AC goes out, right? And communication is the name of the game. So the idea is that you'd start with a property management software that facilitates is comprised of all those features. And we're also Canadian based, so that's the idea. It's Canadian currency. I know there's a lot of competition from the U.S. where we know our markets well, and we have multiple doors across the entire country, over 250 clients, over 150,000 doors, and we've established ourselves as one of the strongest prop tech businesses out there. So, I'm having a lot of fun, and I jumped onto this opportunity because I was having issues myself managing my own properties, and I noticed, funnily enough, that my property managers in Peterborough, without me nudging them, they signed on to Building Stack through hearing about them through another podcast or meetup, and so it just made sense, right?
Yeah. And I encourage, I think more and more technologies playing a big impact. We've had other guests on the show that have not this exact software, but software that does everything you can, maybe to streamline. What I like about yours is that it brings a lot of things together, but we have a lot of platforms where you'll run a credit check, but what about doing a bank check? We had guys come in and talk about that. So being able to try and add on, I think in the real estate buying and selling world, there's a lot of things available, a lot of resources, a lot of systems in place. But when you jump over into the landlord tenant world, we're kind of short. So I think having platforms like this allows us, for those, like you're saying, and it's funny that Building Stack was a response when it comes to growth. Is there any other ways you'd say people could, outside of systems, and that way you mentioned relationships, like what are some key relationships that have helped you and you'd encourage others to have that can kind of move them along? Again, I know you mentioned real estate, but I know there's so much more to a power team, and I'm sure you're working with as well.
Yeah, so I guess, the best book I ever read regarding joint venture partnerships is Money People Deal by Stefanio. And, he simplified it best, where those who go really far in real estate are because they find the deals and they find the money. Those are really the two biggest pillars of this game. And I know you're familiar with joint venture partnerships. They're a great way to go because there's always risk in private money is very expensive if you have a deal. And the idea is that, this is a lot of fun, this business, when you're able to work with either friends, families, or other people that are interested in real estate, but really don't have the time to manage tenants, toilets, termites, like they always say, or just the business, because it's not a fully passive business. I have property managers, I need them, and that's the way I started my business. But it's even not fully passive, even when you have that. So the idea is that it's often best to reach out to the meetups and the networks, because there's a lot of people who want to invest in real estate but don't have the time. I would encourage your listeners who want to grow, once they have a few properties and they're no longer qualify on the A lending end, is to explore the idea of joint venturing with friends, family, work colleagues, etc. Because there's a lot of opportunity. Many people want to invest in real estate and you don't know about it. And when you show them some of the success that you've had, not in a bragging way, just say, look, bought this a few years ago for this is what it's worth now, this is what we've done to it. It really piques people's curiosity, and there's always an opportunity to form a partnership when it's right, when the synergy is right, when there's a good relationship and there's a common vision of what you want in 3-5 years and beyond. Yeah, absolutely. Joint ventures is a great way to go to for those of your listeners that are looking to build past 3 to 5 doors.
Yeah. And for the listeners who are in the city, I think this has been a really good episode because they're able to see that you don't have to stay local. And unfortunately, with where prices have gone in the GTA, we've often felt, hey, I'm going to move out to, Peterborough as an example. And that's kind of close enough for me, but there's enough cash flow built into there. Well, now with the expansion that we're seeing, we have to be more and more comfortable with being outside of a drivable distance. And I think you've been doing that before it was cool. And I think it's a good opportunity for people to hear how that could work. And I love that you're still doing it. It's not like you did it, say, I'm never doing that again. You've actually been able to build a system around it and want to continue doing it, and actually are expanding into other markets that are further away from you as well. So I love watching you on social. I'm curious, maybe share with our audience where people could find you, kind of tune into your journey, and also get involved or figure out what's going on with Building Stack.
Sure. Yeah. My email is jared@buildingstack.com. And my Instagram handle is jaredh55. That's JAREDH55. Those are 2 great places to reach out to me, whether they're interested in Building Stack or real estate in general. Please hit me up. I'm always up for talking about real estate and helping out investors any way I can. Yeah, that'd be great.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate you taking the time to share with our listeners, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bradley. Take care.